On August 7, 2026, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office published its fifth tranche of declassified records, 41 files, spanning material from the 1940s and 1950s through the present day. The Pentagon frames it as part of a cumulative release now numbering in the hundreds of files drawn from across the government: the CIA, the FBI, NASA, the Department of Energy. The headlines wrote themselves. Pentagon releases UFO files. But there's a gap between what a release contains and what it proves. And the most important sentence in this entire tranche isn't in any of the documents. It's in the framing around them. Some context. AARO was stood up in July 2022, consolidating earlier Pentagon UAP efforts. Its first director, physicist Sean Kirkpatrick, departed in December 2023 after publishing findings that found no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial technology or reverse engineering programs. John Kozlowski, a former National Security Agency scientist, took the directorship in late 2024. Under Kozlowski, AARO has emphasized two things: case resolution methodology and a public-facing document repository. The tranche system is that repository in motion. It is important to understand what it is: a Defense Department administrative release, curated and redacted by the same office that adjudicates the cases, not an independent declassification process. Here is the linguistic hinge. AARO's own standard is that a case is closed as resolved when the object can be attributed to a mundane source: a balloon, a drone, a satellite constellation, an optical artifact. Everything else remains unresolved. And AARO has been consistent, in report after report, that unresolved does not mean anomalous. It means there was insufficient data to reach a determination. That is a claim about the sensor, the witness, and the record, not about the object. When coverage upgrades unresolved to unexplained, or notifications to incursions, it hands the Pentagon a free correction. Precision here isn't pedantry, it's the whole argument. So what's in them? Across the tranches, the material clusters into recognizable categories: mid-century military and intelligence correspondence, investigative case files, photographic stills, sensor and video clips, and internal analytic assessments. The 1940s and 50s era material sits in the lineage of Project Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, and the presence of Department of Energy records points plausibly toward Atomic Energy Commission era reporting around Western nuclear installations. That's an inference from provenance, not a claim about content. Much of the historical material is already familiar to researchers who have worked the National Archives and FOIA reading rooms for decades. The novelty is consolidation and official imprimatur, not, in most cases, new revelation. Then the redactions. AARO's stated rationale falls into predictable buckets: protecting operational security, sensor and platform capability, specific locations, and the identities of witnesses and personnel. Each of those is a legitimate, statutorily grounded exemption. Each is also load-bearing. Because in a UAP case file, sensor performance data isn't peripheral to the analysis. Frequently, it is the analysis. Redact the radar cross-section, the seeker parameters, the exact altitude and coordinates, and what remains is a narrative summary the public cannot independently audit. The redactions may be entirely justified. They also make it structurally impossible for outside analysts to test AARO's resolutions against the underlying evidence. This is where the legislative history matters. Senators Schumer and Rounds introduced the UAP Disclosure Act in 2023, modeled on the JFK Records Act. It proposed a records collection at the National Archives, a presumption of immediate disclosure, and, critically, an independent, presidentially appointed review board with authority to overrule agency withholding. The archive provisions survived into the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization Act. The review board did not. What remains is a disclosure mandate with no external arbiter. Agencies assess their own harm, weigh their own public interest, and mark their own homework. The tranches are the visible output of that arrangement. A word on figures, because this is where reporting most often breaks. In fiscal year 2025, AARO logged 319 UAP reports. Separately, it recorded 50 uncrewed aircraft system notifications near nuclear sites, up from 18 the previous year. Those are two distinct populations, counted against different criteria. The 50 are not a subset of the 319. They cannot be summed. The nuclear-adjacent figure describes notifications, reports that something was observed, not confirmed incursions, and not identified objects. The near tripling year over year is genuinely notable, but its significance depends heavily on whether reporting behavior changed, sensor coverage expanded, or the underlying activity increased. AARO has not resolved that question publicly. Now step back and look at the method. A rolling release in tranches without a published master index of what exists, what's been withheld, and what's still under review has a specific property. It is unfalsifiable from the outside. There is no denominator. 41 files out of how many? Hundreds released. Out of what universe? Absent a documented inventory, the public cannot distinguish a good-faith incremental declassification from a managed drip. Both look identical from here. That is not an accusation. It is a description of the information asymmetry the current structure produces, and precisely the asymmetry an independent review board was designed to break. So where does the fifth tranche leave us? With more paper, marginally more transparency, and the same epistemic ceiling. The documents released on August 7, 2026 are real, and their publication is a genuine improvement over the era when their existence was denied. But they do not establish anomalous phenomena, and AARO has never claimed they do. The honest reading is narrow. The government has begun showing its files, on its own schedule, with its own redactions, under its own judgment of harm. The disclosure mandate was written to require more than that. Whether it ever gets there depends on the oversight architecture Congress declined to build.